This is Bob Clarkson. Is that so? Well, we're going to ponder a few pieces of our human existence, each of which might have the question appropriately put to it, is that so? We're going to start with relationship. We're going to start with the word choice and how those two words fit together. They belong together. So I'm going to start off with a brief story, some folks I talked to recently. A gentleman named Paul lost his son at age 32. I was talking to him at the bar and he was really angry with God. Almost seemed like a hatred. And his son died, in his opinion, way too young. But Paul obviously blames God for taking his son's life. Well, I've actually heard many people express something very similarly. Well, his wife was also standing there with him, and she and I began to talk, and Jackie lost the same son. And obviously it was in the exact same unfortunate circumstances. But she loves God, and we were having a good conversation about God. So she's, rather than walking away from God, she's still searching for God. I believe Jackie is perplexed, maybe confused, wondering why. But the good news is she's still searching for God's possible reasons for this untimely death. Now, in a sense, she also blames God, but in a positive way. Blame can be good when you're blaming for the right reason. I blame God for a lot of my adversity because I believe He actually helps create its occurrence specifically to teach me things. Well, Paul has chosen to reject God altogether and may even become an atheist. Beer after beer, more and more angry. But Jackie, his wife, has chosen to continue to believe in Jesus. And I could tell by the time we ended the conversation that she really wants to be dearly in love with God and feel His hugs and His affections. So we often lose sight of this fact that our faith, either in God or in ourselves or in atheism, is actually a choice, our own choice. If two spouses in the same house can go in opposite directions over the exact same hardship, then it obviously can't be God's fault that anyone rejects Him. Now, anyone can be in relationship or separated from it. Truthfully, this choice, in or out, is always ours to make. For or against any person has consequences. For or against God has eternal consequences. So, if you got some angers going toward God, realize you can change your mind and decide not to be angry, and rather ask Him to help reveal to you His purposes for you, not only in that one event, but in every event, the good ones and the bad ones. Now, is that so? Expectations might be considered equivalent to bars, protective bars. There are bars in prisons all over the world. There are bars in buildings all over the world. And the things behind the bars are protected from the things outside the bars and vice versa. There are bars in the zoos to keep the animals who would rage and hurt us from getting to us. Well, the bars of my personality, the ones that I own and the ones that I erect, are essentially expectations that I have of other people and how they will respond or how they will act or how they should act. Now, relationship is something that we do that brings us together, and if you're going to hug somebody, it ain't really pleasant to do it with bars between you. Now, if you're visiting someone in jail, you may tolerate the uncomfortable feel of those bars to try to hug through the bars if they'll let you do that. But relationship is built on affections, good feelings, and soft things. If there's anything between us, they're soft and warm and comfortable. Now, to the end that we have these expectations, which can be bars which actually separate us from those that we want to be in relationship, comes down to this basic statement. All of us have expectations. We have expectations of human beings and of God. And when our expectations are not met, we get mad, or we might even get gone. But the reality of the anger is that we have chosen to be angry. Anger doesn't just jump on us from the outside. Anger doesn't just consume us like some external force or storm of nature. Anger begins within. Now, for me, and most people that I know, my unmet expectations of God and other people greatly displease me. And anger management requires changes in expectations, or the anger will continue. You can't just repress the anger. Eventually it will just explode. If you bottle all of that pressured stuff, it will eventually explode the container in one way or another. So anger management with humans, we're dealing with actually relationship pieces, not physical pieces, requires changes in our expectations. And my expectations and yours actually arise out of your beliefs, what you believe or what I believe. So if I want my expectations of you to change, then I have to change my belief about you. Now, I have a son. I can't let him drive my cars because invariably they're going to come back with something broken. I can't afford the auto repairs. Now, I want to change that expectation that he would one day be able to drive without wrecking something, but the truth is he's been doing it so long there's no chance it would be realistic to believe that he ever will borrow my car and bring it back unbroken. It's never happened. It's highly unlikely it will in the future. So if you look at Romans 12:2, Paul says, don't be conformed to this world, or basically trying to control everybody, having expectations about them, and rejecting them or accepting them based on those expectations. But be transformed into lovers rather than haters or discarders by the renewing of the mind. Well, what does the mind do but make choices and beliefs and understandings and all that stuff? We fill ourselves with information in our mind, and then when that information affects our feelings, we actually act out and act for or against. So managing anger or any negative emotion occurs ever, only, and always by a choice to change a belief. Now, changed expectations create different reactions, and if you tend to speak before you think, it would actually be to your advantage to make these changes well in advance of your meeting with any other person. Now, is that so? God actually made an eternal risk. Now, God had the choice either to make angels or not. He had the choice to make humans or not. And his eternal risk was that he made humans. And interestingly enough, humans are actually a higher form of being than angels. Now, right now, it seems that angels have the upper hand. They have the superior position. They actually are more magnificent and amazing than us. But in the end, Scripture's clear, we are going to eventually be higher than the angels And here's the risk. In the beginning, God risked enormously by making beings in his image, mankind. In his image, just like God, we try to run the show of our own lives and actually the lives of a lot of the people around us. And when we force others, or when I force others to do it my way, they're going to tell me to hit the highway. We, as godlike beings who like to be in control of things, don't want others to be in control of us. Children grow up. Most are pretty compliant when they're younger. They begin to develop rebellions when they get a little bit older and can think for themselves. But eventually they want to break out of that parental control into their own universe of self-control. Well, when I try to force another to do something, someone who is an adult, and especially someone who is an adult and not part of my family system, I'm essentially declaring war on them when I tell them they should or should not do something, they will or will not do something. And I watched it in a Christmas encounter yesterday that wasn't all that pleasant between my grandson and his mom. And it's like, what on earth? Both forcing each other. He's an adult, he's 20. She's an adult, she's 50. And it was like two tigers coming after each other. Well, he happens to live in their abode, so I think she believes she has the authority to still control him like a child, but it certainly wasn't a very good scenario. And the sooner we let our children, who are now able to make their own decisions, which means they're adults, make those decisions, make those mistakes, and work through an advisory capacity, we're going to just drive them away instead of befriending them for life. So when we declare war on other people, it comes from the fact that we have a personality. I have a spirit that energizes me to do things, that makes me want things. I have a soul that makes me feel good, bad, or indifferent. And I have a mind that lets me work through how I can handle my feelings and assist my spirit in making choices. The mind is like a computer, and everything really is centered in this computer, even though our feelings feel like they're on our gut down here. God made that, engineered that specification so we can tell there's a difference even in the dark ages before we had all this medical knowledge. But we have a personality just like God. He has a spirit, he has feelings, and he has thinking. And we have been granted sovereignty, rulership over self. So obviously we're going to get mad if somebody tries to control us. So we are sovereign beings just like God himself is. And I've said several times that God is in control of everything. Every event, every circumstance, every experience, everything that goes on to the tiniest detail, except for the only thing that he does not control, and he did that on purpose because he wanted to be in relationship with other beings, those he eternally risked to create, humans. Because relationship is always a mutual choice of two beings who want each other and are willing to sacrifice the self-control to the other person simply because there's an affection strong enough to let the other person have the final word. It's generally called free will. I call it my personal sovereignty. I get to do whatever I want in every scenario that occurs in my life. And I get to believe whatever I want in every situation. So faith, going back to the bar at the American Legion, like everything else that we do, is a matter of our own personal choice. So if you find yourself separated from people or from God, don't blame anybody but you. You make the choice. Now, I've offered myself in friendship to people who say absolutely not, but I don't withdraw the offer, hoping that someday they may change their mind and only one person then needs to make the choice to make this thing work. Now, is that so? Relative truth versus actual truth. Is there such a thing as actual truth or absolute truth? Certainly. Some say, no, everything's relative. No. If we didn't have some things that all of the people in a given culture agree are bad things, we couldn't have law enforcement, we couldn't have justice systems, we couldn't have civilized activity. It would just be like in the old days back in the African bush, where one little tribe fighting against the other little tribe, constantly, killing each other and, whatever. So the essential piece of that is there has to be some body of truth that we can all agree upon in order to live in a culture and a society. So there has to be some actual truth. Well, beyond that, there are some absolute truths of mathematics, absolute truths of physical sciences, absolute truths of quantum physics, absolute truths of math. 2 plus 2 will always equal 4, and formulas to the heavenlies that most of us could never comprehend. The math always works. I was even hearing a German atheist scientist recently make the comment, just the fact that every single mathematical formula, from the simplest to the most complex, works every time with absolute precision. There has to be an intelligent design behind mathematics, which is one of the human things, one of the things granted to us by God. Okay, so let's take this relative and actual truth thing. Well, it goes back to the former topic about expectations. Why do we choose to be angry and hate people or God? Why don't we just embrace them? Why don't we just try hard to accept them and receive them into our inner circle, even if they don't have our same kind of education or the same vocation or all the same things that we do? All people have something of richness that I can glean from being in relationship with them. They don't have to be a computer scientist like I am, or a theologian like I am, or an emotional spiritual therapist like I am. You can do it if you want to. Now, we're basically selfish brats and childish when we're kids scrapping for the toys in the nursery. But even as median and mature adults, we are so self-God, thinking everybody else should do it our way, that we condemn or condone by our whims. People who don't like me, it's just a whim. People who do like me have spent time with me, and they find that, wow, Bob has something to offer that's worth being in friendship with. But we even condemn or condone ourselves. And it's this condemnation that we do, this criticism that we constantly do, this "you're wrong," is based on our own assessments of right and wrong beliefs. Well, right and wrong, mutually agreed upon by the masses, enables civilizations which require such agreement. However, you can't have an up-close and personal relationship, either a human one or a God one, if you have any grudges or animosity toward the other. Jesus even said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Well, what's that mean? That means if I cast the positive, pure motive on the other person's expression instead of immediately assuming they were malicious toward me, I can actually see the love of God in them and actually the possibility of being in relationship with them. And when it comes right down to it, the purpose of God from the beginning in creating mankind and taking the risk that billions of people would rebel against him forever and never want to be up close and personal with him. He gave us the capacity to love as much as he does. We were born with that capacity. He put it in us because he made us specifically so that he could invite us into a loving relationship with him and enjoy that forever. God's love for us was made most irrefutably evident when God allowed his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, to be violently abused, crucified naked, to pay for sins, not his sins, but our sins, to pay for the sins and the shame of the evil that we commit against each other and against God himself. God knew that none of us would get through this life with complete innocence. He also knew that only he, God, or his Son who was born out of God, could actually affect that innocence for us. Jesus Christ could pay our penalty because he was innocent of all evil and criminality. Forgiveness is not a matter of that God just lets it go. All sin had to be paid for, but God himself, who made us to love him, actually paid the penalty and let us pay our sins forward to his Son Jesus so that we could be reconciled and in relationship with him. And that's really the essence of the Christmas story. Christ came in the most humble way. Started out as a seed in the womb of a woman, planted there by God himself. Came to full term, born and laid in a manger in a stable, living in a community that was in abject poverty. He didn't roll in with an entourage and all sorts of glorious things. He came in as humbly as he could so he could get down and reach the lowest of the lowest people on earth. So, if you will, consider the consequences of your choices. Open your heart to more people, to accept them and encourage them and be in relationship with them. But for Pete's sake, or for God's sake, or for your sake, make a relationship with God that's more precious than a relationship with your most significant other on earth. And spend eternity in his presence by your own choice. This is Bob Clarkson. Merry Christmas.